Envision a world where social barriers seem like impossible mountains to climb. But what if destiny had different plans, connecting people from completely opposite universes? Let me tell you a fascinating story, where a tycoon and a teacher defy all odds to experience great love. It all starts in a small country town, with cobblestone streets that tell stories around every corner and cozy cafes that seem straight out of a fairy tale. There lived a teacher who dedicated her life to teaching, driven by a passion that illuminated each class. In such a simple scenario, the appearance of a great businessman seemed unlikely, but that is exactly what makes this story so special. Natalie was a young teacher who was very loved by everyone in her city. She was super dedicated and passionate about her students and life. She grew up in a simple family and learned from an early age that education was the key to overcoming the difficulties that came her way. She was very intelligent and sensitive, and even though she faced financial difficulties, she never let it get in the way of her love of teaching. Every day in the classroom was a new adventure, and the joy of teaching gave her the strength she needed to face challenges and move forward, always with a smile on her face. Now, let me tell you about Joe Davis. He is a big businessman in the real estate sector, that is, he sells and buys houses, buildings and land. Joe was very rich because he inherited a huge fortune from his family. He is known for being very serious and business-focused, but he is also young and very handsome. His life is full of luxury, parties and businesses that involve a lot of money. Destiny began to bring these two very different worlds together. Joe went to Natalie's town to see a place where he wanted to build a really big resort. During a walk through the city, he ended up entering a small bookstore. Inside, he saw Natalie organizing an activity with her students, a book club for children. She was reading stories to the little ones, and she did it in such a special way that Joe was enchanted. That scene brought back memories of his own childhood, and he couldn't stop looking at Natalie. Interested in listening, Joe sat quietly in a corner. The children were mesmerized by Natalie's words, completely attentive. When she finished, the room erupted in enthusiastic applause, and students began asking several questions. Joe was delighted to see how much the little ones loved Natalie's stories and admired the talented teacher. Joe was so impressed that he decided to go up to Natalie to introduce himself. He said, "Hi, teacher. I was amazed at the way you told the stories and kept all the students attentive. Sorry, I'm so excited I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Joe Davis." He reached out to her. Natalie smiled and replied, "Nice to meet you, Joe. I'm Teacher Natalie." "Thank you very much for the compliment." Natalie smiled and said, "I'm glad you liked the story I told my class. I don't think I've ever seen you around here before. Are you from here?" Joe was silent for a few seconds, thinking about what to say. He couldn't reveal his real reason for being in town, especially now that he was interested in getting to know her better. So he replied, "No, I'm from another city and I'm here on business." "Would you like to have coffee with me, Natalie?" Joe asked, trying to avoid explaining why he was in town. "Absolutely, Joe. Thank you for the invitation," Natalie replied, smiling. Thus, the connection between them began. They started meeting every now and then, walking around the city, visiting cozy cafes and having inspiring conversations that warmed their hearts. After 2 weeks of dating and hot conversations, Natalie was starting to feel attracted to Joe. He was also really liking her and saw that their relationship had a future. But Joe still didn't declare himself, as he knew that the real reason that took him to that city wouldn't please Natalie. One afternoon, Natalie took Joe to see the beautiful forest there. The forest was truly incredible. Birds of various colors and songs flew between the trees, and a clear and peaceful stream flowed down the hill, making a charming melody. Suddenly, the weather turned and it started to rain heavily. The water in the river rose, preventing them from returning to the city. It was then that Natalie remembered that there was Mr. Johnson's cabin nearby. They ran to Mr. Johnson's cabin for shelter. When they arrived, they noticed that the cabin was empty, but Natalie was sure they could spend the night there. Mr. Johnson was famous for his generosity, always allowing villagers to take shelter in his cabin when he was away visiting his daughter in another town. So, with the rain pounding on the roof, Natalie and Joe settled in, grateful for the cozy haven. As soon as they entered the cabin, Natalie and Joe lit the fireplace. It was bitterly cold, so they huddled close to the cozy warmth of the wood stove. The rain continued to fall heavily outside, creating a soft melody against the roof. The light from the flames danced around them, creating a magical and intimate atmosphere. With our bodies close, warmed by the fire and each other's presence, a kiss became inevitable. They looked into each other's eyes and slowly moved closer until their lips met in a tender kiss. "Natalie," Joe murmured softly, "since the first day I saw you, I have longed for this moment." Natalie smiled and kissed him again. For most of the night, the sound of rain covered the whispers of joy and pleasure they shared in that place. When dawn arrived, the sun appeared with its golden rays, illuminating and drying the forest. Beautiful and peaceful nature reigned again. The river level dropped, allowing them to return to the small town. But, my friends, the love that Natalie and Joe shared that magical night would soon be put to the test. The following afternoon, while Natalie was still beaming with memories of the times they spent together, she received devastating news. The school principal called her in for a serious talk. With a worried look, he revealed that Joe was in town to demolish the school where she taught, a place that was not just a building, but a fundamental pillar of the community. Natalie felt her heart sink. The man she was falling in love with had come to destroy something so precious to her and everyone around her. Torn between how she felt about Joe and her commitment to her students, Natalie faced a difficult dilemma. "I can't believe the man I'm in love with wants to demolish the school," she thought, distressed, upon discovering the truth. Later that night, Joe showed up at Natalie's house with a bouquet of flowers, even more in love with her. When she opened the door, he said, "I discovered the whole truth about you. You are a big real estate businessman and you came to our city to destroy our school." Tears started to roll down his face. "How do you have the courage to create a project to demolish our school? What will happen to my children without a place to study? That's why you didn't tell me anything, isn't it?" he asked Natalie, with a deep sadness in her eyes. "Natalie, please listen to me. I didn't tell you why. From the first day I saw you, I liked you and I didn't want to miss the chance to get to know each other better." Joe tried to speak, but he couldn't. He managed to finish the sentence, as Natalie closed the door, leaving him outside. Will their love be strong enough to overcome these challenges? In the days that followed, Natalie ignored all of Joe's insistent calls. Wanting to save the school, Natalie organized community meetings and led street protests. She and Joe argued intensely, and their conversations completely changed, no longer full of love and affection. "You don't understand, Natalie. Building is all I know how to do," Joe said, trying to justify his actions. "This city deserves a quality resort," said Joe, trying to convince Natalie. "And end everything around? Is this living for you? Is taking away the chance for many children to learn what you want? No. Real building is what my school does, giving children the opportunity to grow and learn." Natalie responded, with passion in her voice and tears in her eyes. Joe was silent, not knowing what to say. He knew he needed to build this resort, but now he was beginning to understand the true price of his plans. Doubt and guilt began to creep into his heart, and he found himself torn between his dreams and the impact they would have on the lives of so many children. The plan to build the resort was conceived by Joe's father. Before he passed away, he asked his son to make this dream come true. Joe knew that by keeping this promise, he could lose Natalie. The demonstration to save the school became a decisive moment. Natalie, with the support of the entire community, organized a huge protest. Joe, watching in secret, realized how crucial Natalie was to the children and the town. He was torn, not knowing what to do. On the one hand, there was the promise made to the father, on the other, Natalie's enormous positive impact on everyone's lives. Joe was caught between his promise to his father and his growing love for Natalie. Feeling lost, he decided to seek advice from his grandfather. With a look full of tenderness and the calm that only experience brings, the grandfather listened attentively. After a moment of reflection, he smiled and said, "My dear, the solution is right in front of you. Why not reimagine your father's resort design? Transform the school into part of a large community center. This way, you honor your father's memory and preserve what is important to Natalie and the community." Your father made a mistake when planning the resort and forgetting that a good school is essential for the development of a society, said the grandfather, with wisdom in his eyes. Inspired by his grandfather's words, Joe decided to redo the project. He worked hard and, with his grandfather's help, transformed the idea into something even more beautiful. Next to the luxurious resort, he planned a wonderful community center, including the school, reading rooms, a theater and sports facilities. Everything would be built by Joe and offered to the community for free. This new project would not only honor her father's memory, but also preserve the essence of the community and love he found in Natalie. Joe and his grandfather Joe were super excited to share the amazing news with the community. They called a big meeting to tell everyone about their new project. When they showed everyone the plans, teacher Natalie was totally thrilled. She couldn't stop smiling and got teary-eyed when she saw that the kids were getting a brand new school with cool rooms for art, music and sports. The grandfather knew who the woman his grandson had fallen in love with was. When he saw that beautiful girl, he said to her in a funny tone, "Wow, my grandson Natalie is a very beautiful and charming woman. If I were a little younger, would try to steal her from you." Natalie overheard Grandpa and Joe's conversation, laughed and gave Grandpa a big hug and kiss on the cheek. "Thanking you for your wisdom in helping Joe change the resort's design." Everyone was very happy and couldn't wait to see the new school come to life. But the grandfather gave his grandson one more push and said, "Come on, my son, what are you waiting for? Kiss your beloved soon. Take advantage of this moment of happiness and declare the love you feel for her." Joe and Natalie looked at each other with faces that were agreeing with those wise words and kissed each other with lots of love. Joe once again declared himself to Natalie, now with a light heart, for having changed his plans for the better and for having found that teacher who completely changed his life. A year later, the new resort opened with a very special ceremony, the wedding of Natalie, the teacher, and Joe, the real estate mogul. The sun was shining, illuminating the place decorated with colorful flowers and twinkling lights. When Natalie and Joe walked hand in hand to greet their guests, Natalie's students and their parents were there, applauding and congratulating the couple with smiles and hugs. And so, with laughter, music and joy, Natalie and Joe began a new life together, surrounded by everyone's affection. The school prospered, integrated into the community center, and the resort brought new opportunities to the city. Together, they proved that love and dedication can turn any dream into reality. I hope you enjoyed this beautiful love story between Natalie and Joe. If you were moved and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next story.